Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Isabel and I am happy to have you here. So I have Snorlax in my lap right now, and if you're a returning viewer you will notice that I kind of lack eyebrows today, and that's because I just haven't had the time nor the desire to dye them their usual dark brown color. So anyway, with that addressed, in today's video I wanted to go over some things that I have taken away from therapy, some physical, actual papers that I have here, some handouts, and share with you their contents because I think that they are extraordinarily helpful. And this video is going to be soft spoken because I am filming on my iPhone right now using just my iPhone microphone because I'm still struggling with my Blue Yeti microphone issues. But without further ado, I wanted to get into this first page here. And it is actually on the back side of this. It says here biopsychosocial intake. So this is just like a little questionnaire that you would typically fill out during your assessment or like your consultation appointment with your newer therapist, or perhaps you take these or would go over and revisit these periodically throughout your treatment. So on the back it has here core belief clusters and developmental plateaus. So these are essentially transformative concepts, or there are things, negative things that you feel about yourself or that you say to yourself throughout the day. And this is essentially a guide on how to transform those negative thoughts into something productive or adaptive that isn't derivative and feels truthful and doesn't feel like you're lying to yourself. I think that that's a big detractor for you'll see like a whole bunch of people on TikTok or like fast psychology or like free therapy online, just random people essentially just without a degree spouting whatever feel good narratives that they can think up of. And I think that that's just it's a detriment, and they don't work because sometimes you can't just tell yourself I love myself and I'm a great person. Those aren't mantras that you can have because they don't feel real and they don't feel applicable. So this is the opposite of that. This builds upon a belief that you can justify within yourself and that you have an understanding of and a belief in. So for example, for a negative cognitive belief, let's just say we have I am abandoned, which falls under the survival category. And instead of thinking to yourself, I am abandoned, the adaptive alternative can either be, I can survive, I can exist, and I can get my needs met. So these are extraordinarily simple, as they should be. You can expand on them if you feel comfortable doing so, and if you feel like you're being truthful to yourself. So for example, for the I am abandoned, negative belief. Instead of I can survive or I can exist, I can say, instead of I am abandoned, I can get my needs met independently. And that is something that I believe, and something that is a truth to myself and is adaptive in that sense. So we're in this, not a worksheet, but it's more like a reference sheet. We're just trying to transform these negative core beliefs that we have about ourselves into something that is arguably more positive and more accepting and adaptive to the situation or the core belief at hand. Sometimes feelings are not situational. Oftentimes we feel like they are all pervasive and perpetual, when that is not always, but it often feels like it. So, continuing on with the survival category, we have this negative core belief: I am alone. The adaptive counterpart can be I can survive, I can exist, and I can get my needs met. So it's the exact same thing as before. So we're not negating the fact that I feel alone, but we are just building on top of that and saying, well, regardless of this feeling, how can I supplement this feeling with another belief that I have? Next, it's not safe to feel. This is another negative core belief. It's not safe to feel. The adaptive counterpart can be I can begin to learn when and how to. And then you fill in the blank. So, for example, for it's not safe to feel, the adaptive counterpart for me could be I can begin to learn when and how to be vulnerable. Or I can begin to learn when and how to be sad. The next survival core belief is I am unimportant. And the adaptive counterpart is I have value regardless. This is one that I continually encounter in my therapy sessions, the feeling of being unimportant. So this adaptive belief, I have value regardless, is something that I find myself saying a lot to myself. And as I repeat it in my head, and I also will write it on sticky notes, or my therapist will write it on sticky notes, and I'll put them in places that I see them frequently. So, for example, like on my nightstand, or on my computer, or on the mirror. The mirror is quite an effective place because often when you're looking in the mirror, you're viewing yourself and being the most critical of yourself at those points. So putting it on the mirror can be useful. The last survival negative core belief is I am invisible. The adaptive counterpart is I can get my needs met. So regardless of feeling that I am invisible, I can get my needs met. So that concludes the survival cluster. There are 3, not 1, and not 2, but 3 different subsections of this next cluster, which is responsibility. So, this first section is control. and it is the negative core belief is I am powerless or helpless or trapped. And the adaptive portion is I can control what I can in, and then in reference to the situation or whatever you're feeling. The second negative belief is I have to be in control. The adaptive counterpart is I can safely let go of some control. The third negative core belief, I am responsible. And this can be in regards to a multitude of things. So, I am responsible for something bad, for lack of a better term, right? And instead, or rather to supplement that or counteract that belief that you could have about yourself, you could also say, I can recognize appropriate responsibility. I can recognize appropriate responsibility. And in saying that, you can shed yourself some of the guilt that you may be feeling for whatever you felt responsible for in the negative sense. Next is I should have done something. And this is, again, in regards to some negative situation that had previously transpired that you are carrying a sense of responsibility and guilt and perhaps shame for. And the adaptive counter belief is I did what I could. I did what I could. Now, moving on to the second subset, shame or defectiveness, which is essentially these are I am statements. So this is who you believe yourself to be at your core. I am unlovable or undeserving. The adaptive belief is I am okay as I am. I am okay as I am. So rather than I am unlovable and I am undeserving, I am okay as I am. Next is I am worthless or defective. And the adaptive is I am okay as I am. I am okay as I am. I am okay as I am. The next is I am bad or I am selfish. So, like I am a bad person or I am a selfish person. The adaptive is I can accept myself. I can accept myself. The next negative core belief is I am not good enough. The adaptive is I am good enough. I am good enough. Some of these you'll find are difficult because they are the antitheses of each other. And that can be hard because we do it all the time, but it is tough to hold two opposing beliefs at the same time and believe that both are true to the fullest extent, right? So, if that is not something that you believe in or can find yourself justifying from the negative self-belief, I am not good enough. It's hard when you're feeling like that to just say to yourself, but I am good enough. So instead, what I like to say to myself is, I am acceptable and I accept myself. I am acceptable and I accept myself. Because I do not have to be exceptional all the time. That is exhausting. Now, the penultimate of this section is I am inadequate. So, kind of goes hand in hand with the I am not good enough. I am inadequate. And this is where the adaptive belief that I mentioned previously comes in. I can accept myself. I am acceptable and I can accept myself. The last is I am responsible. So it's one of the same ones that we had in the control subset. And if you can remember what the adaptive belief was there, it was I can recognize appropriate responsibility. The final section of the responsibility cluster has to do with guilt. This is a very difficult area for a lot of people. So this area has to deal with I did statements. So it is a self-evaluation of behaviors, often very critical and negative. So this first one is I am bad. And instead of that, we can adapt that into I can learn from my mistakes. The second, I am a failure. Instead of this, we can instead say, I did the best that I could. I did the best that I could. Third is once again, I am responsible. And the adaptive is, I can recognize appropriate responsibility. And then again we have, I have to be in control, which becomes, I can recognize what I can and cannot control, which is a very important one. I can recognize what I can and cannot control. There's also a great exercise that you can do for this one that involves a Venn diagram of sorts. I usually just use a circle because one circle is easier than two, right? In terms of manageability. So, for example, you would put everything that you can control in the center of that circle, and everything that you can't, you write outside. And this is a physical activity. So, you just get a piece of paper and a pen, and you draw that circle. And again, you put what you can control inside of the circle, and then everything else that you can't control, you put on the outside of that circle. And you'll find that there's a lot more that you can't control that you can. However, there's a lot more that you can control than you would have initially thought. So, moving on. I am powerless or helpless or trapped. And this was one that we visited earlier in the control section. And again, the adaptive belief is I can control what I can. I can control what I can. And the last in this subset and in the cluster for responsibility is I should have done something. And the adaptive is I did what I could. Now, the second to last cluster is vulnerability. And the first negative self-belief is I am vulnerable. I am vulnerable. And the adaptive counterpart is I can protect myself. I can protect myself. The second, I am powerless. You'll find that there are a lot of repeats in this core belief clusters developmental plateaus sheet, because a lot of these feelings share different origins. So sometimes it's best to just continuously list them, because if you're trying to go quickly and you're referencing the sheet and you categorize this feeling that you have into one of responsibility and control, feeling out of control, you'd be able to pinpoint it in multiple locations on the sheet. It just makes it easier. So again, I am powerless, I am helpless, and I am trapped. The counterpart for all three, the adaptive, is I can control what I can. I can only control what I can. I can control what I can. The last section is PTSD. So, and the T, it says, it clarifies here, is the trauma, of course, in child, with a child or adult onset. So it doesn't necessarily matter when this occurred. These are universal adaptive beliefs that you can use for these negative core beliefs. So this first one is a feeling that is very, very common in PTSD, people with PTSD. So in myself, it is a symptom or a side effect rather of panic and panic attacks. And it is the belief I am going to die. And that's like I am about to, right? Or just the general idea and fear of death. And this is in reference to perhaps flashbacks or a recurring feeling, or after being triggered. So the adaptive form is I survived. So if you're recalling these instances of trauma, often, obviously not willfully, if you do EMDR therapy, then that's sort of willfully. My heart goes out to you. EMDR is very difficult. Regardless, the adaptive is I survived. I survived. I made it out alive. I survived. The second is I am in danger. And the adaptive is I can survive. I can survive. You'll find a lot of people try to say, I'm gonna be okay. This is okay. I'm alright. I'm fine. And that, to many people, and myself included, is just ineffective. So rather than saying, I'm alright, oh, I'll be fine, it'll pass, I find myself saying the adaptive counterpart, I can survive this. I can get through this. I can survive. I have survived similar in the past. I survived the original event. I can survive this recurring nightmare or whatever it may be. And the very last, the final negative core belief is simply, I am overwhelmed. I am overwhelmed. And the adaptive is, I can get through this. I can get through this. I can do this. I can get through this. Again, I would just like to reiterate that these are merely outlines, so they're just the bare bones, and you can expand on them as you see fit. A lot of these, they're made to be incredibly simple, so that you are able to further adapt the adaptive belief into something that is most suitable for you and something that will be the most effective for you. And with that, I do want to mention that if you are struggling with mental illness and you feel that you are on a mental decline, I highly and very strongly encourage you to ask for help. And I understand that therapy is expensive, and there's a large stigma around therapy in general. But I have been in therapy since I was a kid, since I think I was like a single digit. And I can confidently say that if it were not for therapy, that I would not be able to make this video and share this exercise and these exercises that have worked for me right now. So I urge you to seek help if you need. And as well with that, if you do seek help and you are referred elsewhere because that person can't, the professional can't handle your case, or they think you'd be better suited for someone else, don't stop. Don't stop. That's happened to me before several times. It's not a fun journey, but it is incredibly worth it, and I highly recommend it. So don't be discouraged. Your health is very, very important, and I hope that you're able to use some of the things that I went over today and put those in practice for yourself if you ever find yourself with these negative thoughts, the negative self-talk. I hope that you can use these adaptive beliefs and mantras for yourself and get through the day a little better. That is going to be the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed and that you have a good rest of your day or night or morning or afternoon, whatever time it is for you. I hope that you're able to get through it just a little easier with this. I hope that you get some rest, and I will see you very soon.